We are going to be in chapters 12 and 13, and I may end up squishing some things. We'll see. But then here, we left last week with this Van Gogh image of the raising of Lazarus. And we're going to see another version of that image. And we also left off with talking about Mary and who all these Marys are in the Bible. Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus. Mary makes a return in chapter 12. So I just wanted to make sure we remembered, but we were struggling with Mary a little bit because she maybe doesn't seem to be the faithful follower, but then she answers, she hears Jesus's voice. And I think in her next actions, we're going to see a little bit more of her faith. So that is that's wonderful. And we are still in Passover because we know that John likes to frame everything in terms of the Jewish festivals. So just by way of introduction. And then here, the Marys are all confusing, and Wikipedia is not normally my favorite source, but they happen to have a really nice chart of the different Marys. And they're not, I think there may be even different versions of this chart and maybe some dispute about, but just as a general overview, there's Mary Magdalene. She is not, she's in John 20, so we haven't met her yet. And then who we're talking about is Mary of Bethany, who is the sister of Martha and Lazarus and John. So any other questions or thoughts about all the Marys?
Thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's my biggest problem. Every time I read about Mary, I say, now, which Mary is this?
Yeah, you mentioned, Christine, that Mary was not maybe quite as dedicated. In my study of it, I found a reference one time that said she was, in the kitchen cooking or something, and Jesus is in the front room teaching, and her sister said, come on, Mary, get out of the kitchen. He's here. And this is my paraphrase, of course. And so she missed out on things, because she was one of those. I mean, I feel for her because I like to cook. So if I'm busy cooking, I'm ignoring my guests.
So John, which Mary was in the kitchen?
The sister, the sister of Martha.
Martha? Isn't Martha the one that? And Mary was at his feet, sitting at his feet.
So I got it wrong. It was Martha.
I don't know, Christine.
Yes. So in Luke, is it 19? Don't quote me on that. Luke chapter 9. In Luke, Mary and Martha appear, and that is where Mary. Martha says, "Why? I'm doing all this work. I'm cooking and cleaning and doing all the things. Why? Jesus, tell Mary to come and help me." And so and we're going to see a little bit of that idea of what it means to serve. That's coming up. So let's get there. How's that?
May I ask one more question about
Sure.
Mary? Can you go back?
Yeah.
Both of those say John 20 for Mary Magdalene and Mary Bethany. Mary of Bethany is Martha's sister, right?
Right. Yes.
Right.
So who was it that saw Jesus in the garden and recognized his voice when he called her by name?
I believe that was Mary Magdalene.
Okay. So not the Mary that just now
Correct.
heard his voice.
Thank you for correcting my
resurrection, I believe. That was after the resurrection. Those words are kind of amazing. She doesn't recognize him at first.
I was thinking
She
it
thinks
might have
he's
been
the gardener. She thinks he's the gardener.
I was thinking what we just read was a foreshadowing when he called her voice, but no, different Mary.
Well, were there not multiple Marys? I have to admit, I kind of am reading one or two chapters at a time right now because that's kind of what I can handle. But I'm looking here. Let's see. Jesus's burial.
Definitely,
if you have your Bibles.
18 says Mary Magdalene went and now
Okay.
I've seen the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because then there's also in John 19, Mary, the wife of Clopas, is also there. So there's a lot of Marys to keep track of. So that's why we're working as a team. Bible study is a team sport. So Mary is part of the connection between the story of the raising of Lazarus, and then here Mary, she's about to anoint Jesus's feet. Same Mary, sister of Martha and Lazarus. So this is actually, I found this on the Vanderbilt Library. It's an old painting, anonymous, but I imagine it's a fairly large panel, because here you have up at the top, here's Lazarus being raised from the dead. And then below this panel, you have the Last Supper, and here's Mary anointing Jesus's feet. And I have a close-up of this bottom part as well. But
that looks pretty European, that room.
Yeah, it's 16th century German. I'm not sure this is what it would have looked like in Jesus. In fact, I'm quite certain this is not what it would have looked like. But I liked that it connected these two stories that are, next to each other in the Bible as well. And any other thoughts before we dive into 12? No, all right. So this is chapter 12, verses 1 all the way through 8. Is there someone who'd like to begin today?
I can start.
Thank you, Nancy.
6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? He said this not because he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You have always had the poor. You always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me.
I highlighted this word served. We're going to come back to that. It appears again, and the Greek word diakonia, there's a verb and a noun form, and it is used a lot in John and in the New Testament in general. And because it is also the root of the word deacon, and I am a deacon, it's always a great word to sort of investigate a little bit. But that's why I highlighted that, and it'll appear again and we'll dive a little deeper. What else occurs to you as we read this first part of chapter 12? Anything that you want to highlight or bring up?
Well, yeah, in the narrative that I read, this episode with Judas was sort of the straw that broke the back. Now, Judas was many things. I do not believe he was a thief of the purse. He carried the purse for the whole time that the apostles were together. And he was a very faithful servant in that capacity. So, but I understand where writers probably said, because he did such a terrible act of betraying Jesus, that they assumed that his whole character was shot through. But I think he was, anyway, that's just my surmising. But this act of using this very, very valuable oil, when they could have, sold it and gotten money for the work of the group, he said, "That's it." I mean, that's what I think. He made his final decision to betray Jesus, I think, because of this act.
But just for context, there is a verse, and I don't know if it's in this chapter but there is a verse that says Satan entered Judas's being or his spirit.
Yeah, that's later. That's in chapter 13.
That's not a good sign.
Right.
That might explain a lot of things, though.
sometimes when we read along, we learn that words weren't in the very oldest editions, and I'm wondering if Tim or Christine, if you know, was this part about he did this because he was a thief, kind of later commentary, or was this original text?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Well, the Revised Standard Version says the same thing. I just looked it up.
Okay.
So it's been in the English translation since the late 40s.
Yeah, I guess my point is, I just feel that whoever wrote this, however long ago, I understand why they wanted to paint Judas in the worst light. I just don't think it's true, you know.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I always learn about Bible study, and I had known the story about Martha served and Mary and Jesus saying that he won't be here and let her alone and that, but I didn't realize it was at the home of Lazarus. I had forgotten the person he raised from the dead all of a sudden is welcoming him in his home. I mean, that's pretty miraculous.
Well, it's a very intimate setting, and I look at that Lazarus. I mean, the Judas part is like a little sidebar. You know, you're getting some information ahead of time about Judas, but it's just Mary's, you know, her beautiful act of being at Jesus's feet and anointing his feet with the perfume. I mean, you know, you've heard it preached a gazillion times, but it's no less beautiful. It's just quite a visual.
It's a radical act of love.
Mm-hmm.
And gratitude that her brother, who was dead, is now sitting at the table.
Mm.
You know, keep in mind that these two families have known each other for years. I mean, this isn't a recent friendship. This is the Lazarus family and Mary, Jesus' mother. They've known each other since the kids were kids. So, and that's the connection why they always ended up staying in Bethany at Lazarus' house, etc.
But that's a great point, Diane. Lazarus is risen, and they're having a dinner with Jesus. And the two events are just like boom, boom. You know,
Yeah.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, and that will come into play here. Let's the story isn't quite finished yet. That might have been a bad place to pause, but maybe I'll just read this short part. When the great crowd of the Jews learned that he was there, they came not only because of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on account of him that many of the Jews were deserting and believing in Jesus. So that intertwining of Lazarus's story with Jesus and what's about to happen is thicker here than I remember it. You know, it's always interesting when you reread things, what you notice. And I hadn't remembered that.
Yeah. I found the information that Diane was alluding to in the New Interpreter's Bible. It says the delegitimization of Judas continues in verse 6. That's the thief verse. This verse provides a detail about Judas that will be repeated in chapter 13, verse 29. He was the keeper of the common purse. And this is where Diane's question is answered. Greed was one of the early church's explanation for Judas's treachery. And then they cite Matthew 26:15. And verse 6 can be read as continuing the vilification of Judas in early Christian tradition. Yet the details of this description seem to serve another purpose. Judas is labeled a thief, and then they give the Greek word, but that's the same word used to describe one who threatens the flock. In chapter 10, verse 1, verse 8, verse 10. So the expression, not that he cared about the poor, echoes the description of the hired hand's lack of care for the sheep. The use of these words suggests that the description of Judas is intended to point the reader toward the proper context in which to place Judas's action. When he betrays Jesus, he also betrays the sheep. So we have the greed as an early explanation, but then the author of the gospel is using a word that also means betray, because Judas is about to betray the flock as well as Jesus.
Thank you. Thank you. That is helpful. And Don, I think you were going to, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, I was going to say is I completely forgot that Lazarus was viewed as a threat after he was saved by Jesus. I didn't remember that part of the story. I'm glad we read that last paragraph.
Well, yeah, he's like, once they killed Jesus, as Lazarus still lived, he was a witness to of his miracles.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just brought up this image again. I think it's a little fuzzy. I tried to make it as big as possible with the 16th century image. Yeah, I'm not sure that the wood paneling was would have been quite in Jesus's time. But I do really appreciate, just how there's something about how low Mary is bad. When you think about how if you're going to wipe someone's feet with your hair, you really have to get down close to what would have been very unpleasant to be around feet.
And the fact that the people at the meal are sitting at a table, which of course would not have been the case in the original scene. They would have been lying down on their left arms with their right arms and hands available to feed themselves. But by having them seated, it could either be sort of a medieval error or adjustment, but it also makes Mary even lower.
Right.
If they were all lying around, she wouldn't be as different as we see in this painting.
That's a good point.
The other thing I wanted to add about John Hales's point, what I just read doesn't contradict John's position that Judas was not really a thief. The commentary says that greed was an early explanation, and then also says that the verb the word used meant both stealing and betrayal. So the author of John could have meant both concepts, but this is a 3-year ministry, and maybe I'm a little more cynical than John Hales, but I end up with the same conclusion, that how could Judas have been a thief during a 3-year ministry without the other disciples having called him out? So I think John Hales is right that the guy wasn't really a thief, that he was just being vilified. I think John Hales is right. Got a lot of Johns here.
The central point about Judas is he hated ridicule, and he was embittered that I'm gonna send you guys a narrative about Judas and his character. It's easier to send it to you than to read it. So, but there are many reasons that he portrayed. I think even at the beginning, when he was accepted as an apostle, I know Jesus knew that this was a trip of faith for this one apostle, because he knew his upbringing. He was a child of a wealthy family, an only child, and he was spoiled by his parents. So we've all met spoiled people in our lives, and they're very self-centered, and they take slights, personally, etc. So anyway, that's enough. But I'll send you something to read about Judas.
Well, and Judas, like many of the characters in John, is maybe his complex. And I, just thinking about sometimes I read the newspaper and you hear about people who've had these wonderful lives and careers, and then you find out that they've made this horrible mistake, right? And you think, how did you let this happen? You were leading this good ministry or this good business, and then somewhere something happened. So perhaps maybe that was Judas. Maybe much of his ministry of keeping the purse was okay, but at some point he made an error and it was a grave one. Or
I actually think that Herb hit it right on the head. Sooner or later, Satan entered, and that was the end of that.
I got a question about Satan. My understanding is Jesus went up Mount Hermon and had a face-to-face with the so-called devil and defeated him. Is this not in the Bible? As ever since that event, the so-called devil or Satan has no influence on a human being, none, unless a human being wants to embrace that. And I look at Hitler and his gang; they embraced the satanic life. But am I wrong? Is this just my?
Well, right after John baptized Jesus, if I remember the story right, he escaped to the wilderness where Satan had challenged him several times, face to face.
Correct.
And that's the one that I remember.
yeah,
But that's when Jesus defeated him, and that was it's carried on in some Christian traditions, but it's just, I mean, I don't get the disconnect,
Well,
well,
I
and
just looked up
Go ahead.
Luke, and Luke says, and this is the temptation of Jesus, and the references to Matthew and Mark, but it's Luke chapter 4, and at the end, Jesus says, at verse 12, Jesus answered him, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test." And here is, I think, the answer to the question. When the devil had finished every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. So the devil is available to enter Judas's heart and the hearts of all the rest of us too. Jesus may have defeated him, but the devil departed until an opportune time.
And that, yeah, and like thinking about our understanding of the devil and Satan and how that maybe looks in modern day culture versus how it looks in the Bible, that is a study unto itself. So I encourage you to read, if there's anything helpful you'd like to share with the group during the week. But yeah, I think that is a deep theological question.
That would be a good adult ed conversation that you and
All
Herb
right.
are looking for.
All right, Herb, write that note down. We want to know more about how our understandings of Satan came to be.
On that one.
Yeah, I'll also send you something that'll help explain my point of view anyway.
That would be great. Thank you, John. So, and if it is okay, the next part of chapter 12 is when Jesus enters Jerusalem. This writing on the colt, this is, exists in other gospels. John is the briefest account of this. So is it all right if we go ahead and kind of move through the Palm Sunday story? Would that be okay? All right. Let's see. So he's entered Jerusalem, and then of course, there are people who understand and people who don't. Yeah. So there we are. That pretty much sums up John. People understand, people don't. Lots of things happen.
I think it's cool that Jesus used the tactic of, normally he didn't, he wasn't one that put focus on himself, but he gets this donkey, which signifies someone coming in peace. And then they have the palm fronds and all his followers are there. And that's so he could not get arrested. The Pharisees, well, we don't dare do it now. So that's the way he sort of snuck into the city.
Right. He sneaks into the city, but under this, this proclamation that he is a king, right? That there's this great hope that Jesus is going to restore the earthly nation of peace. So then there's this interaction with the crowd. Diane, would you read verse 20 all the way through 26?
Now, among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor."
Thank you. And so a few verses back, it was just that brief mention of Martha who served, and all. So this word echoes again, whoever serves me, but also Mary has, served in a way as well. And so I think that, Mary is often cast, from both in Luke and in John as, the one who, who anoints Jesus's feet, right? Who is, that's, I guess, maybe a spiritual connection with Jesus. And Martha is the one, setting the table and maybe doing the labor and the work. And so it's interesting because the word diakonia, and this is from a Greek English lexicon, it has a lot of meanings. So there's the idea of service, especially for a meal. And then also, there's the office of the deacon that comes out of the book of Acts, right? So there's this, but service isn't only for, deacons as well. So I think for me, one thing that I've wrestled with is that, following Jesus isn't only, those sort of spiritual acts of anointing and following and sitting at Jesus's feet like Mary did, but also, concrete acts of service and aid to others. It's sort of a both and for me. And I do think that the definition of the word diakonia can hold both of those. And I love that we have these two sisters who help us understand that, because we see here, Jesus saying, whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will be my servant also. So there's really a strong message about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus in this part of John. At least that's what I'm reading. Others may have things to say as well.
Why do you think the request by Greeks to speak with Jesus encouraged Jesus to go on with that little speech?
Right. So I'm thinking, the Greeks were, maybe possibly people who arrived at the festival. I think one commentary said maybe to proselytize. And so, here's Jesus' ministry expanding to more and more people, bringing us that universal of understanding of who Jesus is for. I don't know, others may have a thought about.
Yeah, I have a thought that they weren't Jews. He makes us surround some Greeks, and they're not going to be bugged by, oh no, how can you claim to be be God? The Greeks are just the Greeks, and so they were willing to listen.
I would take a different point of view. If you look at the previous verse, it says, the Pharisees then said to one another, "You see, you can do nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." And then we have the Greeks, and these are not Greek-speaking Jews. These are Gentiles, and they've come to the festival because they want to meet Jesus. So this is what the Pharisees were afraid of, that the movement was expanding. And that's what the NIV commentary says, that they were representatives of the Gentile world.
That makes sense.
And what it sounds like you're saying, the Pharisees or the chief priests and whatever were saying, this is getting out of control now. We've got Greeks coming and wanting to follow this guy.
Right. It's a growing movement.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And I had read that. Thank you for bringing that up, Tim. I read through that commentary this morning as well. So it's thank you, but I didn't remember that piece of it. So thank you.
One word that stands out to me, and I'm kind of stating the obvious, but it's the word glorified. And you just can't miss that word. I mean, for the rest of the chapters that we'll read, it's just like on and on and on. And what I try to do is just understand what is the meaning of that. And I know we won't hit it right on the bullseye right now, but this is, what does it mean to glorify God?
Right.
So
yeah, and it's often here it's connected with the hour, right? Yeah, we've been talking about the hour a lot too. The time is coming. The time is here.
That's a big sentence.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for pointing that out. There's so much in John. I think there are very few sentences that aren't big sentences, I think. Yeah. Any
Earlier, Jesus reminded everyone around him, the hour hasn't come. The hour hasn't come. Now the hour has come for him to show who he truly is.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. There's a little bit of the continuation of this interaction with the crowd. Herb, would you go ahead and read verses 27 through, what is it, 33?
Okay. Now my, excuse me, now my soul is troubled. And what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, an angel has spoken to him. Jesus answered, this voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die.
And thank you, Tim, again, for sending the commentary. I think this piece is a little, this piece, especially 31, speaks to, you know, the eschatology in John, or the, you know, the last things, the destiny, right? That we've been reading about how eternal life is present here and now in Jesus. And that also then his death, this glorification, is going to be, you know, the full expression of Jesus's love. And then it also, that act judges the world because it reveals the shortcomings of the ruler of this world as compared to Jesus. That's how I was reading that commentary.
Jesus is speaking directly to God. This is one of those, there are, you know, pieces, you know, little fragments throughout, you know, the Gospels where he is speaking, he is in conversation with God. He says, Father, glorify your name. It's an amazing moment.
When he says the ruler of this world will be driven out, who do you think that is?
I think it's Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with her, but if you accept the fact that Jesus is our creator son that created our world, and he's our immediate boss, so to speak, and he's come, he's told the Jewish people with whom he had a covenant, going back to Abraham, I'm here now, you know, and they rejected him. They threw him out and killed him.
But Don, when I read that verse, I thought the same thing, and I paused and thought about it.
Yeah, the all these pronouncements to me are Jesus consciously. These are to the public, you know, to the believers and non-believers, And he's bringing this to a head. He's already told the apostles, you know, my time is getting shorter here, and they of course can't digest that. But I mean, we 2,000 years later can see what a planned, an amazing build up to his willing to drink the bitter cup. You know, just
Jesus asked, what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? Well, later on, that's exactly what he's going to say.
I was going to echo that, Herb. I think it's like a preview. My soul is
Yeah.
troubled. Father, should I say that? No, that was the whole struggle in Gethsemane.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're right. He continually asks, Father, is it your will that this happens? And he didn't say no, or I mean, I don't know, but I'm saying it's a consistent. He wasn't. I don't think he was fearful. He just wanted to know it was just the way it should be. And
But it does say his soul is troubled. So that's
He was very human,
touching, moving.
because he was very human.
I would like to go back to the ruler of the world. The ruler of the world was not Jesus. It was evil. The commentary says the expression "the ruler of the world" occurs only in John, but similar imagery is used elsewhere in the New Testament and the Qumran literature to refer to the devil, the embodiment of opposition to God. Verse 31b thus names the cosmic implications of Jesus' hour. It marks the defeat of the power of evil in the world.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
It's
Right,
a
so-
human
yeah, go ahead.
struggle that he's about to encounter. And only
And that
God could
the
pull it off.
implications. I'm sorry.
No,
And then
that was it.
And we have the double meaning of lifting up, which can refer to the cross and also being lifted up to heaven.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting verse.
Yeah. Yeah. So that understanding of, you know, John helps us and encourages us to wrestle with what is it that Jesus does, right? Not only for us individually, but for the world as a whole. You know, what does it mean when evil is defeated? Not just for me, but for all people. And it's hard to imagine. It's hard to wrestle with, and it's hard to understand. You know, how does Jesus accomplish this? And yeah. I'm gonna.
Christine?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? I know we're running short on time, but you had highlighted served a couple of times, and now you've highlighted this is the judgment of the world. And I just would like to get insight into your mind of, was there a connection in these highlights?
There was not a connection between served and the world, although perhaps there's one are you seeing one that you would like to?
No, I was just curious because I'm always looking at the things you highlight, and I'm wondering, you know, so.
Yeah, no, I highlighted that just to bring up that theme of the theme of eschatology that was in the commentary Tim shared.
Okay.
Yeah, I often just highlight things so I don't forget to talk about them. I try not to highlight too much because I really enjoy that all of us see something in each of these passages that's important and worthwhile to discuss. And again, Bible study is a team sport. And so instead of, I was hoping that we might get to, 13, but you know, my hopes are what they are. I'm always an optimist. But what I will point out in 13, right, is where we had, I thought this would be a really good connection, is that, you know, we have Mary who anoints Jesus's feet, and then we have Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And I think the reading those two together is a really kind of rich exercise. But we'll start there next week. And 13, I think, is a shorter chapter than some of the others. So, but 12 is beautifully rich and thick, and so it's good we didn't rush to it too much.
That's good stuff, Christine. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Oh,
great
thank you.
insights. Thank you
So
all.
we'll start with 13:1.
Yeah, we'll start with 13:1 and see how far we can get. No promises. I'm going to stop promising. But I think that's my style of teaching. I just, rather than try and plow through, the discussion for me is the one of the richest parts. So
I think you're
thank
right.
you all for that.
Today was especially rich. Thank you all.
Oh, well, thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, everyone.
All
See you
right,
next
Nice
take
day.
care.
Have a
Be
good week,
well.
everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.